911 emergency response.
Those words are sometimes the last thing a person would ever hear. An estimated 240 million calls are made to 911 every year in the U.S. alone. Some of these are made by victims of a brutal crime. Others are made by the perpetrator of these atrocities. These disturbing audio recordings will chill you to your bones. What you're about to hear is very graphic and may be disturbing for some viewers. I am Mr. Mysterious, and today we'll be delving into some of the scariest 911 calls ever recorded. Donald Spirit had a long history with battery, drug, and child abuse. He was consistently in and out of jail for more than 20 years. He would go on to serve more jail time in 2001. While out on a hunting trip, he accidentally shot and killed his 8-year-old son. The bullet struck the young boy's head after he stopped to point out some rust on the barrel of the rifle he was carrying. The death was ruled an accident, but Spirit pleaded guilty to illegal possession of a weapon. Due to an earlier drug conviction, he was banned from owning a gun. He was also sentenced to 3 years in prison. After being released from jail, John's violent urges started to spiral out of control. In 2008, he beat his 36-week pregnant daughter. Sadly, this wouldn't be the last time he would harm one of his family members. In 2014, the 51-year-old would go on to massacre his entire family. He shot his 28-year-old daughter before going on to shoot all 6 of his grandchildren. The children's ages ranged from 3 months to 12 years. He dialed 911 and, in a calm and collected manner, he informed the operator of what he had just done. In an unflinching voice, he informed the dispatcher,
"I just shot my daughter and shot all my grandkids."
He also nonchalantly added,
"Yeah, one of them is a baby."
He also coldly said,
"You got all the kids are dead in the house. 6 kids, 1 adult."
Throughout the call, he repeatedly stated,
"I'm going to shoot myself on my back step."
He kept his promise, and when a deputy arrived on the scene, Spirit committed suicide. Michelle Wilkin was a kind-hearted 26-year-old woman who, at 8 months pregnant, was expecting her first child. On March 18, 2015, she answered a seemingly innocent ad on Craigslist. The ad was for free maternity clothes. She traveled alone to pick up the baby clothes from an isolated house in the Colorado woods. A 35-year-old former nursemaid named Donnell Lane greeted the expected mom to be at the door. After being invited inside, Michelle immediately sensed danger. Donnell attacked the pregnant woman and stabbed her in the neck with a piece of glass. Defenseless on the floor, Michelle laid helplessly as her attacker sliced open her belly and pulled out the fetus. Donnell reportedly had been telling her boyfriend that she was pregnant, and she needed just one thing to prove it: a baby. After regaining consciousness, Michelle found her baby and the attacker nowhere in sight. She later said that she could feel her intestines outside of her body. With her guts spilling out of her gaping wound, she managed to call 911. Through desperate gasps of pain, she told the dispatcher,
"She cut me. I'm pregnant."
Donnell Lane later turned up at a hospital with a dead baby, claiming she had a miscarriage. Lane was later sentenced to 100 years in prison. Michelle miraculously survived the terrible attack. Despite the devastating ordeal and the loss of her baby, she remained positive. She later visited the people who saved her life, including the 911 dispatcher, and brought them home-baked cookies. Charla Nash was a single mother who was a former barrel racer and horse jumper. She began to work for a woman named Sandra Harold, who owned a chimpanzee named Travis. Travis was a mild-mannered ape who could dress himself, open doors, and even use a computer. Nash would often spend time with the ape, where she formed a bond with him and the owner. However, that would all change on a February day in 2009. That day, Travis was aggravated more than usual and refused to come inside the house. When Nash arrived on the scene to help her friend, he suddenly attacked her out of nowhere. The 200-pound chimpanzee pounced on the small woman. Using his mighty fist, he pummeled the defenseless woman to the ground. He bit into her flesh with his sharp teeth, tearing off her fingers and face. In a desperate attempt to save her friend, the chimp's owner smacked her beloved pet with a shovel. She then stabbed him in the back, but this only angered him more. She then rang the police and, through panicked cries, explained the terrifying scene playing before her. Throughout the call, she frantically cried,
"He ripped her apart! Hurry up! With a gun! Hurry up, please! He ripped her face off!"
Throughout the conversation, you can hear the chimp's blood-fueled howls as he attacked Charla Nash. Locked safely in her car, Sandra watched helplessly as her ape ate her best friend. Throughout the call, the dispatcher repeatedly tells her not to pass out as the chimp roars in the background. Officers arrived on the scene within minutes and fired several rounds into the chimp. Charla Nash surprisingly survived the mauling, but suffered debilitating injuries. She lost her nose, ears, lips, jaws, and hands. The attack also left her permanently blind from an infection spread by the chimp. Nash would go on to receive extensive facial reconstructive surgery and a successful face transplant. She was awarded a $4 million settlement from Sandra Harold in 2012. "17-year-old Jake Evans seemed to be an ordinary boy who stayed out of trouble, but lurking beneath his mild-mannered appearance hid something sinister. Evans was a huge fan of the Rob Zombie Halloween remake and had watched the film 3 times in a single week. He admired Michael Myers for how at ease he was during the murders and how he felt little remorse. Jake had begun to resent his family, calling them racists and bullies. Inspired by the slasher movie, Evans decided to kill his family. He devised a plan to violently stab his mother, sisters, and grandparents. However, fearing that they would feel pain, he instead stole a .22 revolver from his grandfather. On October 3rd, 2012, he decided to put his Halloween-inspired plan into action. He shot his mother and sister in cold blood. He later said, "As I emptied the shells on my bed, I heard noises and realized that Mallory, his sister, was still alive. While I loaded the gun back up, I was shouting that I was sorry and then ran as fast as I could to kill her. I made sure my mom was dead and shot her again in the head." While the dead bodies of his family lay only feet away, he dialed 911 and confessed to his crime. In a calm voice, he described to the dispatcher what he had done and stayed on the phone for 24 minutes. He told the dispatcher,
This is really gonna mess me up for this, in the future. See, my sister, I told my sister that my mom needed her.
Mm-hmm.
She was in her room, and she came out of her room, and I shot her, and she rolled down the stairs, and I shot her again.
In an emotionless voice, the 17-year-old said,
And then I went down and I shot my mom about maybe 3 or 4 times.
When the police arrived, Jake was standing outside the $500,000 home with his hands on his head. After being arrested, he wrote a chilling 4-page account of his murders. In the confession, he described how watching the Halloween remake made him think he could do it. He was sentenced to 45 years in prison. Yasser Abdel Saeed was a strict father to 2 teenage girls, Amina and Sarah. The girls often reported to their friends that their father was controlling and even spied on them. He strongly disapproved of any boyfriends, particularly American boys. He once took his daughters to Egypt and tried to marry them off to much older men. The girls often appeared at school with bruises over their bodies and cuts on their faces. Yasser Abdel would also go so far as to video and audio record his daughters without their knowledge, to keep check on them. He would record one of his daughters at her place of employment and then punish her for smiling at a customer. However, things only got worse when Yasser found out that one of his daughters was dating an American boy. On New Year's Day, 2008, Yasser said he was going to take the girls out for dinner. Unfortunately, he did not take them to a restaurant that night. Putting them in the back of his taxi cab, he drove them away from their mother. Parking in a deserted hotel parking lot, he turned around and shot his daughters several times. Despite heavy bleeding, Sarah called 911. In the chilling call, she yells, By the time the police arrived on the scene, both girls were dead from their wounds. Their father escaped the scene, and a manhunt continues to this day. Yasser Abdel Saeed is on the FBI's 10 Most Wanted list, and they are offering a $100,000 reward for his capture. Who knows where he's lurking now? He could be your neighbor or even a work colleague. Which one of these 911 calls did you find the most chilling? Let us know in the comments. If you found this scary and mysterious, then share and like this video. Also, be sure to subscribe because you really don't want to miss what's coming next. As always, thank you for watching.